In this video, I will demonstrate some of the basics of the type tool in Adobe Illustrator. You can work along with me. Let's first create a new document. Letter and orientation can be portrait style with one artboard, and click Create. In the toolbar, the fourth icon down for the left column is the Type tool. If you click and hold, you will see other type tools listed below, and I'll go over those in the next video. For now, we'll just focus on the Type tool itself, and please forgive me if I mistakenly refer to it as the Text tool instead. Click and drag out a bounding box. A filler text known as lorem ipsum will be inserted into this box. And I've previously typed out the directions for these steps, so I'm just going to quickly place them in by copying and pasting. And now if you see a plus sign in the bottom right corner, it means that you have more text that doesn't fit within the size of this box. So if you switch to your selection tool, click on the plus sign, and then click and drag out another box on your artboard. When you release the cursor, you will see that the text has been filled into the new box. This thick blue line connects them and shows you where one text stops and the rest of the text begins. Be sure to switch back to the Type tool and then click inside the box to make any changes that you would like to your text. There is a second way to use the Type tool. Instead of clicking and dragging out a box, you can just click, and then you will see that it adds the lorem ipsum filler text. And again, I will copy and paste a different text that I've previously written into this spot. You can change over to the selection tool and then grab and drag out the bounding box around this type, and notice that the size and shape of the text changes as you change the size of the box. If you hold Shift while dragging, it will keep the same ratio proportion for your text. In contrast, when I click and drag the bounding box in the first example, notice that it changes how the text fills the box, but doesn't affect the size or shape of the text. Up in your control panel with the text selected, you can see a drop-down with a variety of font families for you to choose from. And within those families, you also have options for font styles. You can change the size of your text. And under paragraph, you can change the alignment. And we'll go over this panel in a bit later. If you highlight the text and then come back up to the font families, you can actually see, instead of sample text, whatever you have typed in now demonstrates what the font will look like. And you can do the same for the font styling as well. Click on where it says character, and it will bring up this panel, where you also see the font families and all the styles that you can choose from. But now you have a lot more options for formatting the text, so we'll take a look at these. First up is setting the font size, and you can click through the arrows to change the size, or you can click on the drop-down and choose one of the preset sizes of points. Under size, you have kerning, which deals with the space between the letters. However, you might get a pop-up saying that that selection can only be set to auto or 0. So instead of using kerning, you can just move over across to the tracking option. And now when you click on the arrows or you click on the drop-down, you can see the changes of spacing between the characters, but mainly between the words themselves. Up here, you have leading, which is spelled like leading, and it's better demonstrated with our list of text, so I'm going to change over and select that instead. And now when I change the leading, you'll see that it's going to change the space between all of these lines. In the next row, you have some options for scaling. First up is the vertical scaling option, and you will see that it's changing the size of the lettering, but vertically only. And to the right is the horizontal scale, which changes the size of the characters horizontally only. Up next, you have baseline shift, which shifts the selected text up or down based on the baseline text around it. This can be helpful if you're typing out things like fractions. And a fun one to play with is the character rotation, which will rotate the characters to various degrees. This icon here will change all of your letters to capital letters. And then the next icon is the small cap icon, which will change them to capitals, but usually the first letter of the sentence will be a bit larger than the rest. You next have superscript for writing exponents, subscript for typing things like H2O. You have underline for underlining all the text, and strike through, which is great for editing text. You also have language choices here, and anti-aliasing, which deals with smoothing out jagged edges of pixels. Clicking these 3 lines brings up more options, and one of the options is to reset the panel to all the defaults. Next, let's take a look at the paragraph panel, and the first row has to do with aligning your text to either the left, the center, or to the right, or justifying, which is how space is added to the text so it lines up with your margins. And you can choose to have the last line justified to the left, to the center, or to the right, or you can justify all the lines to both margins. In the next row, you can change the indents. You can change the left indent, and you can change the right indent, making it go past the bounding box even. And then you can use the first line left indent, and it will indent just the first line of your text, such as the beginning of a paragraph. You can add space in between paragraphs, for example, before each paragraph, or you can add space after each paragraph. For my specific text, I think I will choose to justify last line left, and I'll indent the left and the right a little bit and add some space before and after each line. You may notice that I have hyphenated text, and this is set by default. And you can see the word automatically being split between the 2 columns. I can uncheck that to force the word to stay together. But now notice how much space is between the words for number 5. So instead, I'm going to switch to not having it justified and just align it left instead. Clicking off the text, you'll notice that the bounding boxes disappear. If you would like to have the bounding box with a stroke outline around them, you might think that you would just click on them and then choose a stroke option above. But notice that it colors the stroke around the text, not the box. So instead, you'll need to use your direct selection tool. Make sure you're selecting the box itself, not the text. And then you can add the stroke to the box. So for the next one, again, make sure you're just selecting the box by itself, not the text, with the direct selection tool, and then you can add the stroke. I see that my text is a little too close to that bounding box since I added a stroke. So there are actually a few ways to fix this, but I'm just going to go back to the character panel and use my baseline shift to shift it down a bit. Finally, I want to spell check my work, so I'll go to Edit, Spelling, and check spelling. Here I will start the spell check, and I never know if artboard is 1 word or 2, so you can either ignore it, change it, add it to your dictionary, and continue through until it has spell checked everything. Once everything is formatted the way you would like it, you want to save your work by going up to File, Save As. I'll save it to my Creative Cloud in a folder for this class, and I'll save it as my first name, last initial, unit 03.1 type tool, and then click Save and OK. And that is how you use the type tool in Adobe Illustrator.